Hello, and welcome to our webinar, HarperCollins Children's Books Winter 2021 Book Preview. I'm Julia Smith, Senior Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download these materials at any time by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Today's webinar will begin with a discussion of the new imprint, Heartdrum, after which we will have a presentation of HarperCollins' new and forthcoming titles. That's a lot for one webinar, so let's get started. All right. Heartdrum is a new native imprint from HarperCollins, the first of its kind from a major publisher. Heartdrum differentiates itself by telling contemporary stories of native children from tribes and nations across North America. Led by longtime editor of diverse children's books, Rosemary Brosnan, and award-winning author Cynthia Leitich, Heartdrum's mission is to celebrate the endurance, joy, and richness of Native voices with both acclaimed and debut authors and illustrators. Here to talk more about this new imprint and introduce upcoming titles is Rosemary Brosnan and Cynthia Leitich. All right, do we have there's Rosemary, great. I will start by just giving a quick bio for both our wonderful panelists here, and then we'll begin our questions. Rosemary Brosnan has worked at HarperCollins for 21 years and recently took the helm of the new Quiltree Books and Heartdrum imprints. Throughout her career, she has been committed to publishing diverse voices. She has published picture books, nonfiction, chapter books, graphic novels, and fiction for all ages. Brosnan has worked with such lauded authors and illustrators as Elizabeth Acevedo, Christine Day, Neil Gaiman, Gail Carson Levine, Norma Fox Mazer, Walter Dean Myers, Patrick Ness, Lauren Oliver, Neal Shusterman, Cynthia Leitich, Stephanie Tolan, and Rita Williams Garcia. Cynthia Leitich is the best-selling acclaimed author of books for all ages, including Rain Is Not My Indian Name, Indian Shoes, Jingle Dancer, and Hearts Unbroken, which won the American Indian Library Association's Youth Literature Award. She is also the anthologist of Ancestor-approved intertribal stories for kids. Most recently, she was named the 2021 NSK Newsstand Laureate. Cynthia is the author-curator of Heartdrum and serves as the Catherine Patterson Inaugural Endowed Chair on the faculty of the MFA program in Writing for Children and Young Adults at Vermont College of Fine Arts. She is a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation and lives in Texas, in Austin. You can visit Cynthia online anytime at cynthialeichsmith.com. Thank you for being here, Rosemary and Cynthia.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. We're honored to be here.
All right, let's get going. Let's just start with a very general sort of how and why did you guys decide to start Heartdrum?
I guess I can jump in. I'm blessed by the friendship of a terrific author I'm sure so many of you are familiar with, named Ellen O, who is also one of the founders of the We Need Diverse Books movement and organization. She approached me at a librarian conference over breakfast and suggested that it might be time, past time, for a Native-focused imprint for young readers. And from there, she added that I might be a good person to help make that happen. At first, I thought, oh my goodness, that sounds so ambitious and like such a wonderful possibility. But was I famous enough? Was I fancy enough? I didn't think so. But she did point out that I have a long time background as a writing teacher and interest in nurturing and developing new voices. So she just said, keep thinking about it. And I did. Over time, I couldn't deny the potential of the idea, the rise and exciting talent within the Indigenous creative community, both with regard to our writers and illustrators. And I knew the perfect editor to team up with for the job. So I reached back out to Ellen and I said, were you really serious about doing this? And she said, yes, absolutely, let's make it happen. And from there, I sent an email, which has been apparently recently rediscovered from the digital miss by my perfect choice, my original children's editor, Rosemary Brosnan, and I'll turn it to her from there.
Thank you, Cynthia. I remember when I got that email about 2 years ago, I was so excited. And I immediately talked to Suzanne Murphy, our president and publisher. And without any hesitation, Suzanne said, do you want to do this? I said, yes. She said, okay, go ahead. It was as easy as that. And I emailed Cynthia the next day and said, yes, we're going to do this. And then it took us some time to set everything up with Cynthia and with We Need Diverse Books, who is our partner in the venture. But it's been just really one of the highlights of my very long career and such a pleasure to work with Cynthia on this.
Wonderful. What can librarians and readers expect from this imprint?
It's fair to say that we are going to be making a particular contribution to the conversation of books. Native children's literature is really seeded from our tribally owned and Native owned presses. At the same time, there was a huge need for more voices in the conversation, especially those at larger publishing houses. So in considering the fact that there already is an existing landscape, where I saw a particular area in which I could make a difference was with regard to contemporary narratives centered on young heroes, child and teen protagonists, as well as recent historicals. Though, say in the 20th century, there's so much from the more distant past, and we still need more quality books in those categories. But because of the sort of myths of erasure and extinction, I really thought that this Heartdrum imprint would be an opportunity to send a message that we're still here, that we've been here all along, and that we've been making a difference in our tribal communities and in the larger world. So we're primarily interested, again, in child-centric stories about kid and teen heroes, mostly fiction across all age markets and categories. So chapter books through YA, realistic and speculative fiction, and we'll be doing just a very limited amount of selective nonfiction, again, with an interest in the present and more recent past.
And one thing that I always look for when publishing any book, when I'm doing the acquisition process and going through the decision making about whether something is right for a list, I'm looking at story. First and foremost, is it a good story? And is a child or a teen going to be interested in reading this? And I think that so often with Native books, they've been looked at like medicine. You know, here's something for social studies where it's good for you, have a teaspoonful and you're going to learn something. And really what we're trying to do with the Heartdrum books is to offer kids and teens good stories and good storytelling first and foremost, so that they can either see themselves in the books that they're reading, sometimes for the first time, or they can read about Native kids and realize, oh, these kids are still here and, you know, people I want to know about. But there's nothing medicinal about the books. I'd like to say that. They're just really enjoyable and fun to read. And I think kids will learn without knowing that they're learning.
I would like to add to that just briefly that I remember when my first novel came out, one of the reviews mentioned that there was a surprising amount of humor in the book, considering it was about Native characters, which took me by surprise. And I think that goes to some of what the evolution is that Rosemary is talking about, that we started with more of a social studies framework. And now we're looking at books that will teach incidentally through submersion, but also are both for Native and non-Native children alike. In Heartdrum books, you're going to find humor. You're going to find page-turning adventure. You're going to find heartfelt stories about young people who are growing and changing in their lives. So certainly they will be very much grounded from their Indigenous perspective, but they'll also be experiencing much of the universal aspects of growing up and facing challenges and engaging in community and adventure.
And we're not having the authors over explain in the books as though the books are not for Native kids, as though they are there to teach about Native kids. I think that we have a lot of Native languages in some of the books. One of the novels that we're publishing in Summer 21 has a great deal of Navajo in it because it's about a boy who's living for the summer with his grandmother on the Navajo reservation, and that's the language he speaks. And so I think that readers will just have to immerse themselves in the worlds of these books that we're publishing. And I think that we have to give children and teens credit because they can do that.
We have some really beautiful back matter wherein the author's voice acts a bit like a bridge. And we're also working with Native educators to provide teacher guides and other materials so that those of you who are connecting these books with students, young readers in your community will feel comfortable navigating that role.
Thank you. I guess one thing that I have observed, which is maybe one of those things that is self-evident to someone who is of Native heritage, but just that in the one book I read, there was so much to offer differentiation in tribal beliefs and culture, and how it's not just, you can't do one paintbrush for all natives. And so, like, I learned so much about individual histories in a fiction narrative where it didn't, like you said, it didn't feel like you were getting a school report or something in there. So that's one thing I'm very excited about with this imprint.
Yes, we're very interested in diversity within Indian country, which is tribally specific, and of course includes other intersections of identity, just like any other community would be.
Just a quick question related to all of this. I know you said you'll be doing a little nonfiction and then a lot of fiction for across the age groups. Are you planning to do any picture books, or is it just novels and everything right now?
You want me to take that one, Cynthia?
Roll with it.
We have signed up quite a few wonderful picture book texts, and 2 are being illustrated right now, and several others are in process, finding illustrators. So yes, we're doing a lot of fabulous picture books that we're really excited about.
That's great. Okay. Well, how do you go about choosing the books and authors that you want to have represent your imprint?
Some of it is proactive. One of the terrific things about the Heartdrum program, working with HarperCollins, is that they're making an substantive annual donation to We Need Diverse Books so that the Native intertribal creative community in Kidlit can hold annual workshops, developmental workshops. This year, this summer, we actually went very quickly from an in-person plan to an online plan, which worked out beautifully. I was blessed to be joined by my fellow author and dear friend, Tracy Sorrells, in teaching Native up-and-coming voices about craft, as well as the industry and fostering community and support between them. That has been a really key part of our effort. And beyond that, you know, there is an active conversation, I think, in the community of creative folks. I am already connected to several up-and-coming voices, and certainly folks who are out there are referring new folks to me, and I'm able to point them in helpful directions, whether their work is a fit for Heartdrum or if it's not. For example, if they're doing work that is more distant historical, which is needed but isn't really our focus, I'm able to mentor them more broadly in terms of their career building and goal setting.
Cynthia spends a huge amount of time mentoring authors. I don't know that you're giving yourself enough credit. There's so much behind the scenes work that goes on Cynthia's part on development with authors before I ever see anything.
It's a team effort. Definitely Tracy Sorrell, who I mentioned, and Joseph Bruchak, and some other really dedicated authors and illustrators are helping to nurture new talent. But it's such an exciting time for us. You know, I remember when I was first getting started, there were years at a time, literally years, wherein I was the only Native voice represented at major conferences. And having one or two other people was a really exciting exception for me. So the fact that our community has grown in strength, grown in skill, is really worthy of celebration. And so much of that is, of course, due to the support of teachers and librarians. I remember being on those early panels, probably with some of you at different conferences, where you all would show up and be encouraging when it was a different time. And I want you to know that you're part of the reason that I stuck with all this and was able to work with Rosemary to make Heartdrum happen.
Cynthia, this is going to be mostly for you. And you've touched on it earlier, but would you be able to say a little bit more about the history of Native children's literature?
I'd be honored to. And what I'm about to lay out is true for certain other marginalized and underrepresented groups in the body of literature. Essentially, what has happened is that Native children's literature representation started with retellings of traditional stories and historical fiction, some of it better than others. And that historical fiction early on was very much centered on landmark events. For example, the Trail of Tears. Then over time, we moved to historical fiction more broadly. From there, we started to see contemporary fiction that was connected to some sort of a social justice movement. And the next step after that was contemporary fiction that was more reflective of daily life. The last stage has been for us and for many other groups, genre fiction, speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, and we're just now really starting to see that in exciting ways. So I feel like, you know, there is so much more hope and plethora of possibilities for Native voices to come onto the scene and not only fill in the gaps, but also to really innovate throughout the entire conversation of books.
Thank you so much for that. Let's see, we're getting down to time, but one question that I saw pop up in chat was just sort of another format question, but do you have any plans for graphic novels in Heartdrum?
Yes, we haven't signed any up yet, but if a wonderful graphic novel comes to us, we would definitely be interested in publishing. We're open to all formats for kids and teens.
Ideally, I would like young readers to be able to grow up with Heartdrum books as part of their reading diet, from picture book on through young adult and everywhere in between. No matter what kind of a reader they are, what sort of just predispositions, what kind of books on the shelf they reach for, I'm hoping that one or more of ours, preferably more, will fit into their goals and desires.
Hey, Thank you. That was actually my main questions for you, but there's always more that sort of people want to make sure they get out there to communicate. So are there any points that we didn't discuss yet that you feel librarians should know about this new imprint?
It's important for me, for librarians, to know that there is a lot of diversity within Indian country, not only in terms of the various tribal nations, of which even within the borders of what's currently called the United States alone, we're talking about well over 500, each with its own culture, language, belief systems. Obviously, we're not going to be publishing 500 plus books a year, but we'll certainly do our best to be tribally specific, to be authentic, to be respectful, to be mindful of intersections like socioeconomic diversity, body type. Black Native people are, of course, an important part of the community, and those voices and characters would be reflected too, and so forth. So when you're thinking about Native books, it's really important to keep in mind that range, and we're going to be building over time to fill in some of those gaps I talked about, as well as moving the conversation forward.
And I would just like to say thank you to all the librarians out there. We have felt so much support for Heartdrum. It's really been overwhelming and wonderful, and we appreciate you very much.
I'll echo Rosemary's thanks. Traditionally, and still today, Native books most often live and breathe by word of mouth. Your voices are absolutely critical to creating a brighter reading future for Native children and all children. And I couldn't possibly be more grateful to you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I think this is a really good time to move into some of the books and individual titles that people can expect to see. Because I've seen some questions in chat about when can people get these books and what is coming. So let's just move on to that part of our presentation.
Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Okay, Cynthia and I are going to tell you about our exciting Winter 2021 Heartdrum launch list. The Sea in Winter is by Christine Day, an enrolled member of the Upper Skagit tribe. It's a beautiful middle grade novel by the author of I Can Make This Promise, which was an American Indian Library Association Youth Literature Award honor book and an ALA notable book. Of The Sea in Winter, Kirkus said in a starred review, in her second novel, Day offers a heartening glimpse into the immense patience and love required to endure limitations, build strength, and repair damage. An insightful, stirring read about healing and resilience. Christine was devoted to ballet for many years and thought she was going to be a ballerina. When she was injured, giving up ballet was wrenching. She used her experience to write this book about a Maka and Piscataway girl, Maisie, for whom ballet is everything, and whose injuries destroy her dream of being a ballerina. It's about disappointment and depression in a young person and how to climb out of that, how to learn to ask for help, which is an important thing for all kids to learn. It's a very affecting book. I dare you to read it without crying, as you'll care so much for Maisie. Michaela Goad, enrolled Tlingit and Haida, painted the beautiful cover art. Next slide.
Ancestor Approved Intertribal Stories for Kids is a middle grade anthology that brings together 17 writers and an illustrator through interconnected short stories, poems, and cover art to offer an immersive reading experience. The book is centered on its setting, the Dance for Mother Earth powwow in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The various story protagonists hail from tribes across the continent. A hero introduced in any given story may show up as a secondary character in a story by another author. So each can stand alone, but reading them all adds a layer of resonance. The contributors include highly established Native and First Nations authors like Joseph Bruchac and David A. Robertson, quickly rising stars like Tracy Sorrell, Carol Lindstrom, and Eric Gansworth, and new voices like Andrea L. Rogers and Don Quigley. The world building for this collection was collaboratively created via an online message board, emails, texts, phone calls, and in-person meetings. The stories reflect the diversity within Indian country and are funny, heartfelt, suspenseful, mysterious, touching, something for everyone. Next slide.
Jingle Dancer is Cynthia's first book. We originally published it in hardcover in 2000, and here we are, it'll be 21 years later, publishing it in paperback with revised cover type and some updates from Cynthia. It's been a big seller in hardcover for all these years and really has become a classic text. The story is about a contemporary Muskogee Creek Ojibwe girl who needs to find jingles for her jingle dress and enlists the help of the women in her family so her dress will sing at powwow. It's about community, family, and coming together for a cause. It is often used in classrooms in place of the outdated, stereotypical books that place Native people only in the 19th century, as we were discussing previously. We have retained the lovely art by Cornelius Van Wright and Ingwa Hu. Next slide.
Indian Shoes has been repackaged with a new cover by Cherokee illustrator Sharon Erla and a new interior art by Cherokee illustrator Mary Beth Timothy. This contemporary realistic chapter book celebrates the daily life adventures of young Ray and his grandpa Half Moon, who are Cherokee Seminoles living in Chicago and, in one short, visiting family back home in Oklahoma. The book is most notable for featuring an urban Native family. Most Native people today live in cities, but that reality has gone largely unreflected in children's books. I'm thrilled that it'll be available in paperback. The ebook is available already. Next slide. Rain Is Not My Indian Name is also being repackaged in paperback and ebook with a new cover by Métis artist Natasha Donovan. It's set in Douglas County, Kansas, sort of on the outskirts of the community around Haskell Indian Nations University. This novel is on the younger side of young adult or tween. Cassidy Rain Berghoff is on a healing journey, and she's also a budding photojournalist reporting on a science and technology summer camp for Native teens. Mado, thank you. Next slide.
Okay, I think it is our turn. First, I want to thank Rosemary and Cynthia for talking to us about Heartdrum. Thanks a million. As Rosemary said, the response that we've received from you all, from educators, librarians, and from booksellers has been extraordinary. And wait till you read these books. They're terrific, and we've got more exciting things coming down the pike. So thank you again for joining us this morning, Rosemary and Cynthia. I'm Patty Rosati, and I am the director of the School and Library Marketing team at HarperCollins. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about our teen books that we have coming out in winter 21. Just to give you a little insight into us, we're letting you know what we're reading and what we're watching. We're doing a lot of both these days. I just finished When Stars Are Scattered last night. It's terrific. It being on many end of year lists is no mistake. It's terrific. And I just started The Vanishing Half, another book, an adult novel that is also on lots of end of year best of lists. So those are great. And I'm watching The Right Stuff on Disney Plus. So some of you might remember the novel, the Wolf novel, and then of course the great film with Ed Harris as John Glenn. I didn't think they could do any better than that, but they have. This miniseries is pretty terrific. So if you haven't watched it yet and you're interested in all things space, I highly recommend. I'll toss it over to Mimi so she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mimi Rankin. I'm a marketing manager here on the school and library team at HarperCollins Children's Books. I am currently reading The Road Back to You. So if anyone wants to talk about Enneagrams, hit me up. And then I am currently rewatching for probably the fourth time, The West Wing. It was kind of a comfort watch the past couple of weeks. And I'll hand it over to my associate, Katie.
Sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute for a second. I'm Katie Dutton. I am marketing associate here on the school and library team. I am currently rereading A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. If you guys haven't read it yet, it is spectacular fantasy. It came out in June. Enemies to lovers, romance, they're all trying to kill each other. It's great. And I am currently watching and kind of obsessed with Julie and the Phantoms. It is very heartwarming and it is very wholesome, and it's on Netflix.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. Before we get into our titles, I wanted to talk to you for a minute and a half or so about Shake Up Your Shelves. Just this past September, we launched this program to encourage teachers and librarians and booksellers to really purposely consider diversity in their curriculum and their collection practices. And we wanted to offer guidance in introducing new texts by BIPOC authors into collections and classrooms. So what we did was we gathered some of the best front list and backlist titles by diverse creators, and we support them with high level yet really accessible educational materials to help you update your collections and your curriculum with books that are more inclusive, representative, anti-racist, and equitable. If you go to the next slide, please. We have a dedicated website. The URL is right there in the center. And there you'll find educator guides, title lists for picture books, middle grade and YA. You can see those on the right side of this slide. Shareable social assets and posters. If you see on the left side of this slide, those are all posters that we created and that are available for download on the website. Also, we've seen some of these out in the wild. Some librarians have sent us photos of these signs that they downloaded with, a great book display in front. So we hope you might think about doing the same in your own libraries or classroom. We have title-specific guides as well, links to other trusted expert resources, video content from popular authors like Angie Thomas, Jasmine Warga, Erin Entrada Kelly, Soman Shanani, and more. Our goal basically is for this to be sort of a one-stop shop for diversifying your collections. And we're currently running a very cool sweepstakes that you can and should enter. So if you have time, please do take a look at the website and the materials. Don't hesitate to reach out and let us know what you find useful or what you'd like to see more of as we continue with this campaign. Next slide, and I think we are, and these are the books that we are going to be featuring from in winter 21. Basically every 4 months or so, we're going to refresh the titles and add to the list. So these are the ones that we're going to be adding in the beginning of 2021. Okay, next slide, and I think it's Katie's turn to tell you about some picture books.
It is. Hi, thanks, Patty. I am absolutely ecstatic to be here with you guys today, raving about all of the gorgeous picture books that we have coming out in winter 2021. Before I dive in, I do want to remind everybody that e-galleys for all of the books we're talking about today are available by request on Edelweiss, and almost all of them are on NetGalley as well. So just make sure that your profile specifies that you're a teacher or a librarian, and you should be approved within the next day or two after requesting. And even more exciting, the full interior PDFs of all of our picture books are available on Edelweiss for immediate download. You don't even have to wait to be approved. And so with that little bit of housekeeping out of the way, let's talk picture books. Next slide. First up, we have Time for Kenny, written and illustrated by the Brian Pinkney. Many of you are familiar with Brian. He has received 2 Caldecott honors, 4 Coretta Scott King honors, a Coretta Scott King Award, and the Boston Globe Hornbook Award. As you might guess, we are absolutely thrilled to have him on our list. This book, which has already received 2-star reviews, is made up of 4 very short, deceptively simple stories about a young child's day. Next slide. Getting dressed, learning to play soccer with his sister, overcoming his fear of a large, noisy vacuum cleaner, and getting ready for bedtime are all part of Kenny's day. These everyday relatable events paired with bright and energetic illustrations. I mean, just look at the movement there. I love it. They really create a lovely and accessible family story. And the clear, short sentences and repetitive text make Time for Kenny an excellent choice for emerging readers. This is going to publish in January. Next slide. You might know Daria Peoples-Riley from her acclaimed picture books, I Got Next and This Is It. In America, My Love, America, My Heart, Daria invites readers to answer timely and timeless questions beating inside the hearts of children across America. Next slide. America, do you love me? My black, my brown, my pride, my crown. What begins as a simple question from a single child multiplies as America, my love, America, my heart sweeps across the country with every page turn, inviting in more and more children of color and their questions. Does America love them when they speak or whisper or shout when they stand? Does America love them just as they are? This is a powerful and important book for Americans of all ages. The poetic text encourages readers to confront bias, prejudice, and discrimination, and invites readers to reflect and respond with their own answers while honoring the identities of Black and brown children and people of color. As you can see here, the oil painting illustrations are just incredible, and they incorporate patriotic colors, which is just so striking in their unique perspective. This resonant, multifaceted book is a fantastic conversation starter for children, for families, for classrooms, and for communities. We'll publish this in April. Next slide. Next up is Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, written by Joanna Ho and illustrated by Zhang Ho. I need you all just to take a moment and write down Joanna Ho's name right now, because this is a debut author who is just going to blow you away and burrow into your heart. She is absolutely phenomenal, and she's really just getting started. This book is stunning in every way. Next slide. It's the tale of a young Asian girl who notices that her eyes look different from the eyes of her friends. But then she begins to realize that her eyes are like her mother's, her Amma's, and her Maymay's eyes. They have eyes that kiss in the corners and glow like warm tea, crinkle into crescent moons, and are filled with stories of the past and hope for the future. Next slide. I had to add an extra slide in for this one because, I mean, just look at this art. I really want to wallpaper my apartment with this. I just think it's so gorgeous. And the text is just as poetic and powerful. It's a celebration of diversity and family and empowerment. And I just love every inch of this book. This goes on sale in January. Next slide. Speaking of celebrating diversity, next we have In My Mosque, from two incredibly talented Muslim creators, author M.O. Yuxel and illustrator Hatem Ali, who you might know from being the illustrator of The Proudest Blue and Sadia Farouqi's Yasmin series. This is a beautiful depiction of the joys and traditions found in mosques all over the world. Next slide. No matter who you are or where you're from, everyone is welcome here. From grandmothers reading lines of the Quran and the Imam telling stories of living as one, to meeting new friends and learning to help others, mosques are centers for friendship, community, and love. The vibrant illustrations and beautiful text shine a spotlight on the diversity and multi-ethnicity of the religion of Islam, a religion that's practiced by more than 1.8 billion people around the world. This book's extensive back matter includes more information about Islam and mosques, including facts about a number of famous and historic mosques, many of which are pictured throughout the book. There's a glossary and an author's note. I love the inclusivity and diversity of this book. You can just feel the warmth and joy radiating off the page. And I think it's just a wonderful addition to any classroom or library. This will publish in March. Next slide. So now we have a number of nonfiction picture books, all of which feature change makers, people who have challenged the status quo and made a difference. So first up is The Highest Tribute, Thurgood Marshall's life, leadership, and legacy from the powerhouse multi-award-winning team of Kekla Magoon and Laura Freeman. Next slide. This is the stunning and brilliant and inspiring story of Thurgood Marshall, the first Black justice on the Supreme Court, who was a remarkable fighter for civil rights and equality throughout his entire life. The incorporation of text into many of the illustrations makes this biography even more striking and powerful. And as Kirkus said in their starred review, this book will serve to empower children who feel as powerless as Thurgood Marshall once felt. We'll publish this in January. Next slide. Next, we have She Caught the Light, the story of Wilhelmina Stevens Fleming, astronomer. Next slide. Written by Newbery honoree Catherine Lasky and beautifully illustrated by Juliana Sweeney, this book tells the incredible true story of astronomer Wilhelmina Fleming, a Scottish immigrant who followed her passion and overcame immense odds to carve out a place in a male-dominated field and become the first woman with an official title at Harvard University. In a starred review, Booklist called this an inspiring introduction to an overlooked and incredibly important life. She Caught the Light goes on sale in January. Next slide. From Althea Gibson author Megan Reed and rising star artist Aaliyah Jalil, illustrator of Under My Hijab, comes the first picture book about trailblazing mathematician Mariam Mizrahi, the first woman to win the world's most prestigious honor in mathematics. Next slide. As a little girl, Mariam was spellbound by stories but couldn't stand math until she unexpectedly discovered a new genre of storytelling. In geometry, numbers became shapes, each with its own fascinating personality, making every equation a brilliant story waiting to be told. As an adult, Mariam became a professor, inventing new formulas to solve some of math's most complicated puzzles. And she made history by becoming the first woman and the first Iranian to win the Fields Medal, mathematics' highest award. Mariam's magic is the true story of a girl whose creativity and love of stories helped her and the world to see math in a new and inspiring way. This one also goes on sale in January. Next slide. I love everything Jacopo Bruno illustrates, and this book is no exception. If you go to the next slide, we'll see why. Bartali's Bicycle is a story of how Gino Bartali, internationally renowned cyclist and sports hero, kept his greatest achievement secret. Only upon his death was the truth uncovered, that during World War II, he secretly worked with the Italian resistance to save more than 800 Jewish women, men, and children from certain death, using the one thing no authority would ever question, his bicycle. This book and this story is just so cool. Bartali would pick up packets filled with photos and fake identity papers from the local archbishop, and then he'd roll them up and he'd stash them inside the hollow bars of his bicycle and ride all over Italy, delivering these papers that would allow families to cross safely into Switzerland or flee to America. He'd go to busy train stations and purposely cause a ruckus with his celebrity status so that resistance workers could sneak Jewish families onto trains. He continued his work with the resistance even after being forced into the militia. Like I said, just a very cool, inspiring story. And there's so much more even in this book that I don't have time to get into. The back matter of this book includes a timeline, letter from the authors and Gino Bartali's granddaughter, and a whole bunch of sources for further reading. We'll publish this in February. Next slide. Moving forward in time to more current events, we have The Last Straw, Kids versus Plastics, by Susan Hood, who has earned many, many awards and accolades, including a star for this one and an endorsement from Dr. Jane Goodall. Next slide. This unique nonfiction book is a collection of activist poems about the threat of plastic, and it spotlights real-life kids who are combating environmental challenges. This is a fantastic STEM book that gets conversations started about the growing threat of climate change and how readers, even young readers, can make a real and lasting difference. This intersection of poetry and science and art and nonfiction mini biographies is just a really engaging, accessible way to teach these things. I think this book is one that's perfect for classrooms and for library programming, Earth Day, Poetry Month, STEM units. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And of course, there is extensive back matter. This will publish in February. Next slide. So moving away from nonfiction, we have Mel Fell by Geisel winner Corey R. Tabor, a tale about self-confidence and taking a leap of faith, starring that adorable kingfisher bird you see there on the cover. So this book plays with format in a really neat and interesting way. I wish I had a way of getting you each your own physical copy so that you could see what I'm talking about, but I am just gonna do my best with my words. So if you take a look at this cover, you'd expect the spine to be on the left, right? Well, because we like to be tricky sometimes, this spine is actually on the top of this book. So if you go to the next slide, And if we take a look at these interiors, the gutter is actually right smack dab in the middle of each of these spreads. So it opens up. This story follows Mel as she decides that today is the day she's going to fly, even though she's scared, even though she just really doesn't know how. So she steps off the branch where her family's nest is, and she falls. And she falls and she falls, and the squirrels try to catch her, the bees try to catch her, even a spider tries to lend a hand or 8, but still Mel falls until her fall turns into a dive and she hits the water. And what you see there on the spread on the right is the moment that her dive turns back into flying. So at that moment, you actually physically turn the book around to follow Mel's upward journey as you did her downward journey, as she, next slide, successfully flies back up to her family, Fish and Beak. I promise the whole book turning thing is much easier than I might have made it sound. If you're still confused, there is a video on the Edelweiss entry for this book that shows exactly how it's read. So I highly recommend checking that out. This one already has 2-star reviews from PW and Kirkus, and it goes on sale in February. Next slide. What would you do in a book about you? You might create something that changes a mind or makes a heart stir. You might simply be kind. Next slide. No dream is too big or too small in this exuberant book that asks what wonderful, endless possibilities your future could hold, making every child the author of their own powerful tale. In the celebratory spirit of, oh, the places you'll go, this book is perfect for read-alouds and encouraging engagement with your readers. It's full of questions to stir the imagination and inspire kids to dream big, and it will publish in April. Next slide. The Alpactory by Ruth Chan is about a factory full of alpacas. We all love a good pun. These alpacas specialize in helping you pack for camping trips, sleepovers, first day of school. Whatever you need, they'll help you pack for it. Next slide. This is a very silly story about the very real fears that come with new experiences. They can be scary, and sometimes it feels impossible to be 100% prepared with everything that you might need. I mean, what if you don't have enough pencils for the first day of school? What if the clothes that you bring for your sleepover are just all wrong? The Alpactory is here to help, and maybe, just maybe, help you realize that you might be more ready than you think. This book is fresh and it's funny, and it will leave readers feeling prepared for anything. We'll publish this in April. Next slide. This one is for all you cat lovers out there, and I know there are more than a few. Tim Miller's Tiny Kitty, Big City is about, well, a tiny kitty in a big city. As you'll see on the next slide, that big city is specifically New York City, but this is truly a universal tale of finding love and kindness in unexpected places. Tiny Kitty Big City is heartwarming and playful and just gorgeously illustrated. I love the way it plays with perspective and really captures the curiosity and joy and bravery found not only in kittens, but in so many young human readers as well. This one goes on sale in March. Next slide. And I'm going to close out the picture book section of this presentation with Beacon Alley, which is not at all a picture book. I snuck a graphic novel in here on you. Those of you who were at our last preview may remember that we launched Harper Alley, the new graphic novel imprint, and we couldn't be more thrilled with the response. Class Act, the companion to Jerry Craft's Newbery Medal-winning New Kid, has the #1 spot on the New York Times bestseller graphic novels list, as well as 6-star reviews. A number of other titles from our inaugural list have also garnered multiple star reviews, including PB&J, Lightfall, and A Cat Story, just to name a few. So this book, Beacon Alley, Unlikely Friends, is the first in a 4-book early reader graphic novel series geared towards kids age 6 to 10. Next slide. It is about, shockingly enough, 2 unlikely friends and their antics. It's about sticking up for what's right, what really matters in a friendship, and it's absolutely perfect for those emerging readers. This one is not on NetGalley, but it is available to request on Edelweiss, and it hits shelves in January. And with that, I am going to turn this over to Mimi so she can tell you all about middle grade. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thanks so much, Katie. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Mimi, and I'm going to be telling you about some of the great middle grade that we have coming up early next year. I want to reiterate that you can get these e-galleys on Edelweiss and almost all of them on NetGalley as well. So next slide, please. Okay, first up, I am so excited to tell you about Amari and the Knight Brothers. So this already has 3-starred reviews, and this is what Angie Thomas calls an enchanting fantasy adventure filled with heart and soul. So Artemis Fowl meets Men in Black in this exhilarating debut middle grade fantasy, the first in a trilogy filled with Black girl magic. Amari Peters has never stopped believing her missing brother, Quentin, is alive, not even when the police told her otherwise, or when she got in trouble for standing up to bullies who said he was gone for good. So when she finds a ticking briefcase in his closet containing a nomination for a summer tryout at the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, she's certain the secretive organization holds the key to locating Quentin. If only she can wrap her head around the idea of magicians, fairies, aliens, and other supernatural creatures all being real. This is a super fun read diving into a supernatural world while also tackling racial microaggressions, racism and missing persons cases, and the lengths families will go to save each other. Kirkus says that debut author B.B. Alston weaves magical whimsy with honest, realistic portrayed circumstances, allowing Amari's literal Black girl magic to shine even when she doesn't believe in herself. This fantastic debut is on sale in February, so very, very soon. Next slide, please. Okay, Billy Miller is back in Billy Miller Makes a Wish. The standalone companion to Kevin Henkes' Newbery Honor book, The Year of Billy Miller, is laugh out loud funny and perfect for young middle grade readers. On his birthday, Billy Miller wishes for something exciting to happen, but he immediately regrets his wish when an ambulance rushes to his neighbor's house. Is Billy responsible? Award-winning author Kevin Henkes delivers a short, funny, and emotionally complex novel complete with misplaced love letters, surprising critters, art projects, misguided tattoos, and another surprise for Billy and his family, maybe the best one yet. This one is on sale in April. Okay, so with Root Magic, debut author Eden Royce bursts onto the middle grade fantasy scene with a heartwarming, wondrous story filled with all kinds of magic, both ordinary and extraordinary. Twins Jezebel and Jay are in the middle of change. They just lost their beloved grandmother and are about to start school again amid the tension of school integration in South Carolina in the 1960s. However, the biggest change is yet to come. As they turn 11, their uncle, Doc, wants to start training them in the art of root work. As Jez begins to learn more about their family power, however, she sees a path to dealing with the hostile forces once and for all, and finds that when evil shows itself in the world, it's Jez's heart and her friendships that will see her through. This is on sale in January. Okay, Unplugged from Gordon Korman. So from New York Times bestselling author Gordon Korman comes a hilarious middle grade novel about a group of kids forced to be totally unplugged at a wellness camp who find intrigue, adventure, and a whole lot of chaos. As the son of the world's most famous tech billionaire, spoiled Jet Baranov has always gotten what he wanted. So when his father's private jet drops him in the middle of a place called the Oasis, Jet can't believe he's forced to hand over all of his technology and unplug with the other kids and a baby lizard turned pet named Needles. When Jet realizes there's something off about all the zenned out adults, can he get to the bottom of things before it's too late? And this is on sale in January. Okay, next up is Red, White, and Whole. Reha feels torn between two worlds, her friends at school, where she's the only Indian American student, and home with her strict family and their close-knit community. Reha desperately wants to be normal and decides to go to the school dance, even though her mother, or Amma, has forbidden it. Then Reha finds out that her Amma is sick, really sick. Reha, who has dreams of becoming a doctor even though she can't stomach the sight of blood, is determined to make her Amma well again. She'll do whatever it takes, even donating bone marrow, if it means saving her Amma's life. Author Rajani LaRocca describes this radiant Own Voices novel in verse as the book of her heart, about the ties that bind and how to go on in the face of unthinkable loss. This beautiful, beautiful book is on sale in February. So next, a National Book Award finalist and Prince honoree Alana K. Arnold returns with a powerful, heartwarming, unforgettable story of the mysterious ways in which we're all connected and what those connections mean. Alder has lived in his house for as long as he can remember, and for as long as he can remember, the old walnut tree between his house and the one next door has been there. It's the same tree featured in a photo of Alder, his mom, and his dad, which is the last piece of memory Alder has of his deceased father. That is until a new family moves in next door and unceremoniously cuts down the tree. Oak doesn't understand why her family has to move from San Francisco to Los Angeles. Now she has to go to an entirely new school and live in an entirely new house. And then there's the strange boy next door who won't stop staring at her, like she did something wrong moving into this house that she didn't want to move into in the first place. Oak and Alder start school together, and as the school year unfolds, the two of them realize that they're both broken in ways they don't quite understand, and that they might hold the key to helping each other. This is on sale in March. So next is the Animal Rescue Agency. New York Times bestselling author Elliot Schrafer introduces a delightful and dynamic animal duo in a race against time to save a polar bear cub in the first book of this hilarious and heartwarming middle grade series about friendship and conservation. When a little polar bear cub winds up trapped on an ice heading out to sea, his mother knows there's only one place to turn, the Animal Rescue Agency. Esquire and her unlikely chicken business manager, Mr. Pepper, coordinate with their far-flung agents to get them to the Arctic. In that frozen land, they learn that what happened to the polar bear cub was no accident, and that saving him will put them against the scariest predator in the world, a human. This hilarious and insightful new series is on sale in January. Next, Many Points of Me. I absolutely love this one. When 12-year-old Georgia finds a secret sketch her late father, who is a famed artist, left behind, the discovery leads her down a path that can reshape everything that holds her family and friends together. Georgia Rosenblum's father was a famous artist. Hank Rosenblum's abstract paintings hung in museums and galleries and even in other people's homes. Everyone has a part of him, except for Georgia, who misses him most. The paintings that put him on the map were of asterisms, which are parts of larger constellations. He created one for her mother, one for himself, and one for a bird. There should have been a fourth, but then he got sick. Georgia's mother and her best friend Theo are certain that the last asterism would have been for her, but Georgia isn't so sure. She isn't really sure of anything anymore, not her father's paintings or her friendship with Theo, or even her own artistic ambition. Caroline Gertler's debut novel is deeply felt and delicately drawn, a portrait of a girl finding herself among friendships old and new, and the grief she's only just beginning to let go. This is on sale in January. Next, The World Between Blinks. Bestselling authors Amy Kaufman and Ryan Groudon invite readers into a wondrous world where lost things are found and where two cousins must come face to face with the impossible. With the whole family reuniting for one last summer vacation at their late Nana's home, Jake and Marisol are prepared for an extraordinary trip of their own. Following a map Nana left behind, Jake and Marisol sneak into a nearby lighthouse, then accidentally slip into another world. The world between Blinks is a magical place where all sorts of lost things and people wind up. Everywhere they turn, the cousins find real mysteries from history and a few they thought were just myths, from pilot Amelia Earhart to the fabled city of Atlantis. This first book is an exciting, fast-paced fantasy adventure series featuring fun, interesting facts about history. Is perfect for fans of Chris Colfer's Land of Stories and Margaret Peterson Haddock's The Missing series. This is on sale in January. Next is While I Was Away. In this memorable and empowering middle grade memoir by debut author Waka Brown, a 12-year-old girl's parents send her to Japan for several months to reconnect with her culture, but what follows is a summer she'll never forget. When Waka's parents suspect she can't understand the basic Japanese they speak to her, they make a drastic decision to send her to Tokyo to live for several months with her strict grandmother. Forced to say goodbye to her friends and what would have been her summer vacation, Waka is plucked from her straight-A student life in rural Kansas and flown across the globe, where she faces the culture shock of a lifetime. If she's always been the, quote, smart Japanese girl in America, but is now the, quote, dumb foreigner in Japan, where is home? And who will Waka be when she finds it? This is a stunning middle grade memoir on biculturalism and is on sale in January. So Katie mentioned Harper Alley, our graphic novel imprint. So I'll tell you about some of the middle grade new books we have coming up from that imprint. So this is Unsolved Case Files, Escape at 10,000 Feet. And this is one of my favorite books. I am so excited to talk about it. This is a new graphic novel, new graphic nonfiction series about real FBI cases. And this launches with a gripping minute-by-minute account of the only unsolved airplane hijacking. So if you're not familiar with this crazy case, on November 24th, 1971, a man aboard a Seattle-bound flight handed the stewardess a note claiming he would blow up the plane unless he was given $200,000 and a parachute. So begins the astonishing true story of the man known only as D.B. Cooper and the only unsolved airplane hijacking case in the United States. Comic panels, reproductions of documents from real FBI files, and photos from the investigation combined for a thrilling read for sleuths of all ages. What better way to draw readers into nonfiction than through an exciting graphic novel? The series will appeal to readers of series such as Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales, fans of history and whodunits, CSI Club kids, and graphic novel enthusiasts alike will be pulled in by the suspenseful, complex, and kid-appropriate cases in the series. Sidebars provide fun facts about, in this particular one, pre-2001 air travel, serial numbers on currency, airplane designs, and more. Back matter showcases period photos and primary source material in FBI archives. And this super, super fun story is on sale in March. Next, from New York Times bestselling author Dan Gutman and veteran illustrator Jim Paylott comes the first ever graphic novel starring elementary school's favorite students. In this first book, AJ and the gang are launched into outer space. So the students at elementary school are going on a field trip to NASA. Their tour is led by Mr. Corbett, who knows all about space, including facts on the biggest rocket in the world, the SLS. But when AJ accidentally launches the rocket into space with everyone inside, Mr. Corbett is of no use. Can AJ and his friends find a way to make it back to Earth safely, or will an unexpected extraterrestrial guest keep them in orbit forever? With more than 27 million books sold, the My Weird School series really gets kids reading, and we are thrilled to bring the series into the graphic novel format, and it's on sale in January. So finally, I want to tell you about a new biography series we are launching. Meet the very important people who changed the world in this new middle grade biography series, spotlighting some of history's greatest trailblazers, like Lewis Latimer, an engineer who worked on Thomas Edison's light bulbs, and Dr. Mae Jemison, a former astronaut and the first African-American woman to travel to space. So featuring underappreciated historical figures and groups with a focus on leaders in science and technology, the nonfiction biographies in the VIP series are fun and engaging. Just looking at the cover will make kids want to learn more about these VIPs, and once they dive in, they will zoom through the stories that read like adventures. This is perfect for fans of the Who Was series and Little Leaders series, and they are on sale in January. And that is all the middle grade from me, and I'll pass it over to Patty for teen.
Great, thanks, Mimi. Yeah, I'm going to take you home with a bunch of really terrific YA novels that are coming out early next year. So next slide, please, for the first. YA phenom Angie Thomas revisits Garden Heights 17 years before the events of the mega best-selling, mega influential The Hate U Give, in this poignant, fast-paced, and often funny exploration of Black boyhood and manhood. At the center of the story are Star's parents, Lisa and Maverick, my favorite and many other readers' favorite character from Thug, along with young Seven, King, Aisha, Carlos, and more. It has a fun 1990s setting too, with mentions of beepers, the lack of cell phones, and the music and clothing of the late 90s. Angie really brings this era to life. Rising above circumstances is a theme that runs across many of Angie's books. This time she explores this theme through the lens of a young Black man with limited options for his future. Angie very adeptly tackles what it means to be a good man and father, as Maverick grapples with coming into manhood and fatherhood at the same time. With the dearth of books in the market about teen Black boys, we're excited to have this book about teen Maverick by one of the best authors writing for teens today. We will publish with lots of fanfare in January. A new novel by Neal Shusterman is another cause for celebration. Game Changer is an ambitious, standalone novel about a teenage football player who finds himself in a series of parallel lives that he barely recognizes as his, and is forced to face down his assumptions about the world. This novel uses a high-concept premise, traveling to alternative universes, to examine real issues in our own world: racism, sexism, homophobia, privilege, and more. Neal's been working on this book for more than 4 years, and the result is a thoughtful and timely examination of biases that is not at all preachy and that will get readers of all ages thinking about their own prejudices and biases. We will publish in February. From number one New York Times bestselling author and rom-com queen Becky Albertalli comes a buoyant new novel about love, life, and high school theater. Contrary to popular belief, best friends Kate Garfield and Anderson Walker are not codependent. Carpooling to and from theater rehearsals? Environmentally sound and efficient. Consulting each other on every single life decision? Basic good judgment. Pining for the same guys from afar? Shared crushes are more fun anyway. But when Kate and Andy's latest long-distance crush shows up at their school, everything goes off script. Matt Olson is talented and sweet, and Kate really likes him. The only problem? So does Anderson. Turns out communal crushes aren't so fun when real feelings are involved. This is another terrifically smart, terrifically funny novel about friendships and all of the complications that come with high school relationships, platonic or otherwise. It is also a love letter to theater and will be extra special to those of us who were or are theater kids. We will publish in April. And speaking of Becky Albertalli, she read this next YA romantic comedy filled with Black girl magic, written by debut author Elise Bryant, and Becky said, "Happily Ever Afters is a warm, nerdy, big-hearted rom-com of my dreams, and I dare you to read it without grinning your face off." When 16-year-old Tessa starts a creative writing program in her new Southern California school, she's excited to work on her romance stories as a class assignment. Though she misses her best friend, Carolyn, Tessa feels comfortable among the artists at her new school. Just as things seem to be falling into place, Tessa runs into a debilitating case of writer's block. She's terrified of being called out as a fraud, but her friend Carolyn develops Operation Happily Ever After, a plan to jumpstart Tessa's creativity by giving her an actual love life. Nico, a confident classmate, becomes the center of her plan, and Tessa works towards turning her crush into something more, though she comes to realize that maybe what she values in a love interest is different from what she thought. We are excited about introducing this book and this author to the world when we publish in January. Tress and Felicity were best friends until one night when Tress's parents disappeared while driving Felicity home. Felicity can't remember what happened or doesn't want to, and Tress lost everything. Years later, Tress is desperate to find out the truth, and if she can't, revenge will have to do. Award-winning author Mindy McGinnis draws inspiration from Edgar Allan Poe and masterfully delivers a very dark mystery told in alternating points of view about an unraveling friendship. We got some early big praise from two of the biggest best-selling authors working today. The first is, if Edgar Allan Poe came back to write the scariest high school murder story ever, it probably wouldn't be half as good as Mindy McGinnis's The Initial Insult. That from Mr. James Patterson. And Karen McManus, author of the giant bestseller One of Us is Lying, says, expertly crafted and absolutely chilling, Mindy McGinnis holds nothing back in this twisty, ruthlessly compelling story of a friendship gone wrong. We will publish The Initial Insult in February. 16-year-old Anna is a poet and a lover of language, except that since she moved to New Jersey from Argentina, she can barely find the words to express how she feels. At first, Anna just wants to return home. Then she meets Harrison, the very cute, very American boy in her math class, and discovers the universal language of racing hearts. But when she begins spending time with Neo, the Greek boy from her ESL class, Anna wonders how figuring out what her heart wants can be even more confusing than the grammar they're both trying to master. Love in English is layered with themes of immigration, cultural identity, and finding your voice in any language. It has really playful poetic breakouts throughout that explore the idiosyncrasies of the English language and tells a beautifully observed story about what it means to become, quote, American, unquote. We will publish in February. A lot of good books coming in February. This is Girls on the Line. Journey Smith is a bisexual high school senior who recently attempted suicide by swallowing pills. As she dealt with her parents' divorce and a car accident, Journey's parents got her help and she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Now, as she takes college classes and volunteers at a crisis center, Journey finds a new crush in Etta, whom she meets at orientation. Journey still struggles with her mental illness and is on a path to figure it all out. This is a work of fiction, but it is inspired by author Faith Gardner's own experience and is a great addition for those looking to expand their mental health collections and add more titles featuring LGBTQIA characters. Our first review was from Kirkus and it was starred, and they said about the book, an achingly authentic depiction of cycling through depression and healing. The masterful handling gives the book bibliotherapeutic potential for readers struggling with the same issues. An incredibly tough but worthwhile read. We will publish in January. And the last book I'm going to tell you about is Witches Steeped in Gold. This is set in a fantastical version of Jamaica. It follows rival witches who enter into a dangerous alliance with each other in order to take down a mutual enemy. With great twists and a cliffhanger ending, a Darcy in the Rain level steamy romance, and two characters who are willing to do everything, including kill each other, to get what they want, this book is a powerhouse that you don't want to miss. Inspired by debut author Shannon Smart's own Jamaican heritage, this is the first book in a duology, and we will publish in April. So, as we've mentioned a couple of times, e-galleys for all the books we talked about today and more are available on Edelweiss and NetGalley. We also created a special catalog in Edelweiss that includes info for titles presented today and many, many other really terrific books that we just didn't have the time to get to today, that are all coming out between January and April of 2021. So please look for the link in the follow-up email that our friends at Booklist are going to send, I think, on Monday. You can always visit us at Harper Stacks. Here's some links there, harperstacks.com. We talked about Shake Up Your Shelves. I'd love it if you could check that out and let us know what you think. And if you have any questions or want further information, Mimi has volunteered as tribute to take your emails and answer any questions that you might have. And if we can't answer them, we will find someone at HarperCollins who can help you. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, Booklist. Thank you, Mimi and Stephanie. And have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you very much, Patty, Mimi, Katie, Rosemary, and Cynthia. On Monday, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post daily about all things books and library land. Not yet a subscriber? Pair the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and one more thank you to our sponsor, HarperCollins Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar.